Welcome everybody to our next screencast for Unit 3. Our topic today is The Great War Hits Home, and what we're going to be discussing is how we build up and how the war itself affects us here in the United States. And you can see from the airplanes to the creation of the machine gun and also the effect of war propaganda in World War I. So our learning outcomes, you should be able to explain how the U.S. built its military force, describe how propaganda influenced the war, describe how the Great War impacted the lives of African Americans and women, and number 4, discuss the impact that the Espionage Sedition Act had on the American people. Building up a military. Our army is very small and basic at this point, at the start of World War I. The Army and the National Guard combined is only 379,000 troops. We have a very long-standing tradition of disbanding the military in peacetime. So this is just like how it's been in other times in the past. It's very rudimentary at this point, very small. The Navy is very underdeveloped. Despite the imperialist tendencies that we've had up to this point, it's not on par with, say, the Germans or even the British. The African Americans have been excluded from the Marines and the Navy at this point, so they can only really serve in the Army. And how do we do this? How do we build our military up? It's not through volunteer service. It's through the Selective Service Act. Men 21 to 30 had to register for service, register for the draft, basically. This is going to get expanded to 18-year-olds all the way to 45-year-olds by the end of the war. And we're going to get close to 3 million draftees through this process. The new hazards of war, lice, rats, polluted water, and just general overall filth. These people are having to live in these conditions for days on end. Very little sleep. If anything, they're sleeping during the day, and a lot of action is happening at night. The smell of dead bodies is everywhere. There's no timeouts to get these people out of these trenches. If they die, they end up possibly even being there for days on end. There's new weapons that we've talked about: airplane, machine gun, and the tank. The tank is a very primitive tank. It really only goes 2 to 3 miles an hour and is really only there to kind of get through all of the hazards that are in no man's land with the barbed wire and other obstacles. Poison gas really being mustard gas at this point, and one of the worst things of war is trench foot. You got to keep your feet dry. The only solution is to either amputate the toes and or your foot at this point. And also shell shock post-traumatic stress disorder. This is not even a World War I term only. This is even all the way to today. People hearing explosions kind of take them back to their experiences of war. What trench foot looks like is this. It's blisters, swelling of the feet, discoloration. This guy probably caught it early enough, as bad as it looks. This over here, more than likely this guy's going to lose his feet. The toes, you can see, are pretty much black and dead, and the flesh is falling off his feet. That's why you want to keep your feet dry in any sort of survival situation. Because after days or a week itself, your flesh is just going to start to fall off of your feet. Now, production. What do we do here? How do we produce for war? The War Industries Board is basically going to tell certain businesses that they are now going to produce for the military. It's going to boom production by close to 20%. The war economy is going to cause a labor shortage. Now, there's a reason why in 1914 we cut off that second wave of immigrants. We do not want anyone else coming here from Europe at this point, which causing a labor shortage is also going to cause workers' wages to go up. It's simple supply and demand economics. The problem is, with wages going up, they're really not going to make any more money. The prices are going to be going up as well with inflation. So these workers are actually ultimately going to be making less money because of the price increases of things. Unions are also going to boom here. 2.5 million members in 1916 to 4 million members in 1919. And there's going to be 6,000 strikes in the time that we're in the war. We're only in the war for like 19 months. So do the math there. For 19 months and 6,000 strikes, these workers are going to be feeling like they have the hammer in their hands there to make change happen. Now, the Great Migration. African Americans are going to be moving to the north. It's going to triple their population in the north for a couple reasons. The boll weevil has infested the crops there. They've trying to escape that Jim Crow South, and this gives them a really good opportunity. And the North is going to become this land of promise for them. Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, and St. Louis are going to be the major areas that they're going to migrate to. And they're going to work in this these wartime industries: steel mills, munition plants, and stockyards. Du Bois is even going to be calling for support for the war, despite the fact that they may not have the freedoms that they're fighting for overseas here in the United States, that he believes that it's going to strengthen the call for racial justice and bring both whites and blacks closer together in hopeful racial harmony. This is a very famous picture by artist Jacob Lawrence. It's called Migration of the Negro. You can see Chicago, New York, and St. Louis being the three major areas that these African Americans are going to be filtering to at this point. New York is going to be probably the most prominent one, followed by Chicago and then St. Louis. Now, women are also going to gain a lot from World War I. They're going to be moving into this male-dominated workforce because of that labor shortage. Railroad workers, cooks, dock workers, bricklayers, coal miners, and shipbuilders. Prior to this, women are really only working in a few industries: secretaries, teachers, and nurses, really, or maids. They are going to prove themselves that they can do the work that men could do, and a lot of times they could do the work better. Problem is, they're not getting equally paid. This is still a problem today, where a lot of women are not going to get paid equally for doing the same types of jobs. The legacy of this is a huge one. Wilson is going to see the contributions that women have made to the war effort, and he's going to publicly support women's suffrage, and that's giving them the right to vote. 1919, they're going to gain the right to vote. Congress is going to pass the 19th Amendment, and in 1920, it's going to be ratified by the states, and that is the first time in 1920 that women are going to be able to vote in the presidential election. It is a huge, huge step forward for women. Take a look at this chart right here. This is the wartime economy. The average income, you can see, over doubles from $627 to over $1,400. However, look at the right-hand side. The consumer price index is going to skyrocket in this 6 years. So again, they're really going to be making less money than what they started with prior to the war starting. Now, war propaganda. This is really, really important to the war effort. The CPI, Committee of Public Information, headed by a guy by the name of George Creel. Here he is right here. He's a muckraker. He is going to be promoting patriotism through this CPI. And how he's going to do that is through 75,000 4-minute men. They're going to tell you anything and everything about the war in 4 minutes or less. Okay? So it could be victory gardens, it could be rationing, it could be war bonds or anything. 75 million pamphlets are going to be distributed at this point. This is really one of the few ways that they could get information there during World War I. It was either pamphlet, newspaper, or radio. So this is an easy way to get the word out and spread about what is going on with the war overseas. And you can see here's a propaganda poster right here. Be patriotic, sign your country's pledge to save the food. Again, this is a huge thing to have enough food for our troops overseas. And how do we pay for the war itself? We have to spend over $35 billion on the war effort. A third of it's going to be raised through taxes and a graduated income tax. A lot of the other portion of the tax itself, or the money, is going to be on tobacco and liquor. This seems to be number 1 and number 1A when it comes to needing more tax revenue. Also, Liberty and Victory loan bonds are going to be bought by the public. A lot of people are going to feel like if they can't fight, they should still be giving money to the war effort. And also rationing of food. We're going to, at this point, live with the gospel of the clean plate, that anything and everything on your plate should be eaten and cleaned off, because our soldiers overseas are not getting that same opportunity. And Woodrow Wilson is also going to declare 1 day a week meatless, another sweetless, 2 days a week wheatless, and another 2 days porkless. And a lot of people are going to be creating their own victory gardens to grow their own food, so our troops overseas will have enough to eat. And you can see here, fight or buy bonds, the third Liberty loan. You have two options, really, to fight or to buy the bonds to help fund the war effort. And here are a couple of my favorite propaganda posters. Quiet, know your place, shut your face, a message from the Ministry of Homeland Security. This kind of goes directly along with the Alien and Sedition Acts we'll talk about in a second. Here's another one. This is anti-German propaganda here. You can see the German soldier stabbing the child with the end of his bayonet. This is a lot of the problem that we have coming World War II, because we see all this type of propaganda and ultimately find out it to be fake. So when we hear about what the Germans are doing in World War II, we're very skeptical. And here's another one. Defeat the Kaiser and his U-boats. Victory depends on which fails first, food or frightfulness. Eat less wheat. So again, going off of the rationing of food thing here. Now, the anti-immigrant hysteria, you could even call it anti-German hysteria. We have campaigns for Americanism. Anything German is going to be equated out to being disloyal. We couldn't play Beethoven or Bach anymore in our symphonies. A lot of German Americans are going to lose their jobs simply because they have a German last name. Schools are going to stop teaching German, and we're going to see a lot of names being changed of things. German measles are going to be known as Liberty measles. German named towns are going to be renamed. Hamburger is going to be changed to Salisbury steak. So it's very anti-German at this point. Also, I'm sure you've seen a Dachshund before, right? They're going to even change the name of the dog to a Liberty pup. So again, very anti-German. Also, this is not a World War I era idea. It could be even today. A lot of restaurants over the last 10, 12 years have changed French fries to freedom fries for the kind of anti-French mentality over their non-support of our efforts overseas. And also, even McDonald's, Liberty potatoes? Think about that. McDonald's must be loving it enough to where they can change the name of anything that they want. So, espionage and sedition, $10,000 fine and 20 years in prison if you are convicted. The target is socialists, basically the industrial workers of the world, and radicals here. So, criticism over the government and war policies are being outlawed. You could not speak out against the government or its policies. You couldn't say or print anything disloyal, and you could be fined and or imprisoned if you were caught doing this, in clear violation of our First Amendment freedom of speech and freedom of press. This is something that you would see in a totalitarian government like a Stalin or a Hitler, not in a free democracy like the United States, right? So, again, think about how that term democracy is being used here in times of war. Eugene Debs is going to be a big target of the Espionage and Sedition Acts. He's going to be sent to prison for speaking out against the war. He's going to urge men to refuse service and also urge them to go out on strike and get more money. And this is how popular he was. He was going to gain over 1 million votes in 1920, that presidential election, from prison. Okay, so he was a huge popular person with the average Joe. And let's recap this thing. You should be able to explain how the U.S. built its military force. Again, think about that selective service, 18 to 45-year-olds for World War I. There's really no escaping the draft at that point. Number 2, describe how propaganda influenced the war. We have the CPI. We have those 4 Minutemen. We have all those propaganda posters. You can either do 2 things. You could contribute monetarily or you could volunteer for service. Number 3, describe how the Great War impacted the lives of African Americans and women. African Americans are going to move out of the South into the North, and women are going to be thrown into this male-dominated workforce, and they're going to prove themselves and gain the right to vote in the process. And number 4, discuss the impact that the Alien and Sedition Acts had on the American people. Again, we have this cutting off of our freedom of speech and our freedom of press at this point, that you couldn't say anything bad about the government or its war efforts. A lot of the fear with this is that it's going to spread like wildfire, and then you're going to start to see a potential revolution like they saw with the Russians there. So, if you have any questions, let me know. Find me in class. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.